All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone, to Wellbeing Wednesday. I'm Jamie Ward with Be Well, Care Well, and we are so excited to be back with you this quarter. So, we switched this year to quarterly Wellbeing Wednesdays. So, it feels like a long time, but we are so glad to be back. So, we have with us today Dr. Veronica Guinn, who is right here in Arkansas. So, if you're joining us now or watching a replay and you're in New Hampshire or South Carolina or in any of the other places where you're familiar with Be Well, Care Well, just know that she's right here with us and is bringing some expertise that we cannot wait for you to hear about. So, we are going to focus, I think, for the first time ever, Veronica, on occupational wellness. So, that's one of the 8 dimensions that we haven't spent a lot of time on here in this venue. And so I'm really excited about you being here and sort of framing our conversation around that particular dimension, and really digging into professionalism and what that means and what that looks like for the folks in the early education field. So I'm going to let you start with some introduction and just tell a little bit about yourself. And whatever you want folks to know, just right off the top here, and then we'll get into some questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation. And quickly, I will tell you, I am born and raised here in Northeast Arkansas and went to college here at A-State in Jonesboro and even taught there in the university for a number of years teaching radiology, and then moved into being a dean of students in the Newport campuses. So that taught me a lot about leadership and behavior and how we treat one another as professionals. And then after getting my doctorate in educational leadership, I made a move over into etiquette and manners and how we present ourselves every day as professionals and how that really works into our occupational wellness because it builds our confidence. And
Sure.
once we have confidence in who we are and who we are in the professional world and the value and the work that we bring to every setting really makes us more aware of who we are and the way that we treat one another. So I made a little bit of a move and started doing some more fun things, teaching young professionals how just to have a little bit of an edge, a little bit of a way to find their purpose in what they're doing. And so I travel and teach etiquette trainings and resilient trainings. I also, you'll see behind me, I'm in downtown Jonesboro. This is my loft. This is my office. And so I
Awesome.
host workshops here, but just really on a mission to help build every professional in the state.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So we talked a little bit when we in our prep call, just number one about the fact that early educators are not always viewed from a societal perspective as being, professionals, even though we are. And so I just cannot wait for what you have to share because from the confidence, through the perspective anyway. I just think that what you'll have to share is going to be so valuable. We know that early educators are coming into work, especially those who are working in centers or in family child care homes. Like they're coming in the mornings, and their number one goal is to serve and teach children, young children. And when we're talking about very young children, 5 and under, and so they're on the floor. They're moving. It's fast paced, hands on, like all those things. So, what are just some small ways, just to kind of kick off the conversation? Small ways that they can still present themselves professionally, knowing those things that they're going to have to be on the floor, moving around. They're going to have to be, hands on, fast paced.
Oh,
What you got?
yes. So every interaction you have all day long is an opportunity to present your best self. And even if you're in the floor with kiddos and someone walks in and they're being introduced to you, you may not need to stand, but make eye contact, smile. Those things speak professionalism. When you introduce yourself, I always encourage people to do with your first and your last name. That's our professional way of introducing ourselves. And then it also starts building that brand recognition. Whenever, there's something that to be great and said about you, you want people to know that it was Veronica Guinn who did that. Yes, this is who we are as professionals. And even things as when someone asks you how you're doing, make sure that you answer, but then also ask them as well. These are the things that build a professional relationship. And this is what starts making us more confident to speak to one another, if that's other teachers, if that's another program, or parents who are coming in as the first time. When we just use polite words, simple as the words we're teaching the kiddos, please, thank you, I appreciate you, can you help me? Creating this dialogue in any environment builds up everyone's confidence, your empathy and compassion for one another. Something else that we sometimes forget but makes us really stand out as a professional is following through. So if I say I'm going to call you by the end of the week, I'll call you with a status update if I'm not finished with the project. If I say I'll email or text you with updates or about your children, or we're following through, that's one of the immediate things that you can start doing as a professional, is to say, hey, have I fulfilled the promises that I made today? If I said I was going to follow up, have I? So those are just things we can do if you're going to be late to something. If you know you'll be 30 minutes late, you need to be calling 30 minutes ahead, letting people know where you are, what is the status of things that are moving, because, hey, you really are some of the best professionals in terms of your critical thinking skills. I have a lot of things going on. How am I prioritizing it? How am I making decisions? Because at any minute, I need to switch gears and do something else. So these are such professional skills. And I think early childhood educators exemplify that. And sometimes we can have so many things going off. Just make sure that your words are friendly. And when people are asking you for things, even though we don't have time, it doesn't take but just an extra second to be polite when we're saying please and we're saying thank you. But as you start doing just some small things, you'll gradually see your environment become more positive and people start working much better together.
That's so interesting. It made me, just hearing you talk made me think about, I've shared the story before, but when I got out of college, I had been working in an early education setting. Like, I would go open in the mornings. I would go back after class and close. I was really good with kids. I trusted myself with, to do really well and right by the kids I was working with. But I knew that I was not prepared and ready to engage well with their parents. I still saw myself as a kid myself, just coming out of college, and just did not have the professional skills, I didn't feel like, to be able to really, be a professional and talk to families in an appropriate way without feeling intimidated or, not sure of myself. When we were having, sometimes challenging conversation, or needed to have a conversation that might be a little bit difficult to have. So especially for our younger folks that are listening, and just thinking about that, because not only do they need to be developing the relationships with their coworkers and then their administrative folks in their program, but then they do have that extra layer of needing to be able to communicate well and be professional with the families that they serve too. So any comments about that? Just like, is that different, or is everything you said just like, yeah, and it all applies?
I think it all applies. And I think the more you start to really just start having conversations with people, and you start by simply being confident to say, hi, good afternoon. I'm Veronica Guinn. I work here in the afternoons. Or, hi, I'm Veronica Guinn. I'm here on these days. It's very nice to meet you. Good morning. Good afternoon. These small interactions really build trust and they build credibility. And it's every day when the parents or the administrators are coming in and you're saying, hello, making eye contact, good afternoon. It doesn't have to be a long conversation, but it's
Right.
the small interactions of pleasantries and acknowledging, I see you, I'm saying hello to you, I'm giving you my gift of attention for a few moments. Those interactions build trust and credibility. So so then when I need to have a critical conversation with someone, we've built and established a trust and relationship with one another. So when I can come in and say, "Hi, there's something we need to talk about. There's something that we need to address, or an issue that we need to look at together." You don't want the first time you're having a really hard conversation with someone to be the first conversation you've had with them.
Yeah.
That can
So,
become hard.
yeah. So that's a great segue into the next question I was going to ask about communication, and especially when it's really tricky to do. So, what would your top tips be for navigating through conversations, whether it's with families or coworkers, um, while staying, professional?
Yes. The first thing I always tell people to do is just to really pause and to really listen. Because the goal of any hard conversation is to respond and not react.
Mm,
So if
good.
it takes a minute to say, hold on, let me think about what I just heard, or let me think about the words that I want to use, because we all know how easy and natural it is to just react. Like in a second, I have a reaction. But the professionalism and the maturity and the empathy that comes along with communication is saying, I'm going to listen, because often people want to be heard. And
Sure.
if they feel
Yeah.
like that they haven't been heard, then that escalates in them. So trying not to mirror that escalation, but still staying calm and just pausing and saying, I'm going to listen to everything that they have to say within reason, but everyone's going to be heard before I respond. And I think just switching that from saying I'm not going to react in a second to having a nice response allows us to communicate, and it keeps us in the professional role. Because as we show up as professionals every day, we are committed to really like staying cool and calm. That's within our professional role. Even though we want to react and sometimes we may want to defend ourselves and we may want to jump the gun on some things, the professionalism in us says, hold on, I'm going to listen. I'm going to try to see if I can get to the root of what is really causing this stress. Because often what we're receiving is a manifestation of stress somehow. And maybe just a tweak in the day or a tweak in the process can really alleviate that stress, and it becomes a whole new dynamic.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Pausing before we respond.
Yes, because you want it to be a thoughtful response. And something else, if you're very policy driven or you're very procedure driven, and sometimes those things have mishaps, you always want to look at that process or procedure before you start faulting the person. Because sometimes it may be a glitch in the procedure of how we do things each and every day that's keeping one thing bottlenecked or one thing that's causing extra stress that is the domino effect. And so it's nice to talk to people about what is going on in the process that's not working and see if we can help that or adjust it rather than we're just faulting the person for it not working.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Let's switch gears for a second and talk about appearance.
Yeah.
So I know that can be that word can feel loaded, especially in early education, depending on the setting. Um, there's all sorts of, requirements around appearance depending on where you work. But
Mhm.
what does professional appearance really mean when your job includes getting on the floor and playing and painting and being outside and participating in the play with children? Like what does that really look like? What does that mean?
Professional appearance is always number one, tidy and clean. So, starting with making sure that our hair and our bodies are clean, that if it's makeup, it's fresh makeup. If it's scent, it's natural scent. So we want to be clean and tidy. And even though we may be down in the floor and painting and doing things, our appearance is still tidy for when those parents come in to see us. I think appropriate professional behavior is always covered. I think you are
Ah, yeah.
always If you know you're going to be sitting down in the floor, maybe your running gym shorts are not the best coverage for that. If you know you're going to be bending over in front of little kiddos all day, maybe a really loose top needs a tank or a bodysuit in it, or you need to just be aware that you're always covered and you're always appropriate. And that can be done in t-shirts, that can be done in athleisure pants, but it's the coveredness of your body and it's the modesty in those moments that really speaks to the professionalism more so than feeling like you have to be in a dress or a suit.
Right. Yeah. Which is not going to happen in an early
No,
childhood.
it's not going to happen. And so it's
Yeah.
unrealistic. But it's still showing the respect that we have for ourselves and the respect of our own profession to say, hey, you're trusting me with your child. I'm going to show them as much respect as I'm showing into my own appearance. Because how we're showing up every day tells people immediately how we respect ourselves by the way that we're showing attention to it, how we respect others who we're going to be interacting with. And so, yeah, I mean, hey, now that I'm not having to wear a suit and a dress and heels every day, I make sure that I am covered and appropriate and have some fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So there's a couple things just running around in my head now, just listening to you talk. I want to give a little bit of time to, um, I know that many places across the state, some owners, directors, and so on, are starting to do things like staff retreats, where they take their staff sort of off site and have an activity where they can build, morale and those things that might be in the evening after hours or even on a weekend. They may be doing family nights, just things outside of the typical day. And so, just wondering if you have any advice for handling those moments with professionalism when you're off site, you feel like you can let loose a little bit, but you do still need to be a professional in those moments. And so any advice or tips you would give for those more social situations?
Yes. Number one is understand that the purpose of this is to get to know people personally and to get them to know you personally. So go in and talking about the things that you enjoy personally. What are your hobbies? What do you enjoy to do? Have things to talk about that are not work. Because the last thing that you want to do is go into a retreat where we're trying to bond as a team and it becomes gossipy, or this is not the time to be airing dirty laundry of what's going on in your department or your program. Respect the purpose of the event and really lean into what that's doing for your team to say, hey, let your creativity show. Before you go to something like this, have the things that you want to talk about and you want to show about yourself, because once we start understanding that, it starts showing values. But if we go in just with the latest gripes of what's going on with our team, then it's really easy to let those be on the tip of our tongue. And that's what we don't want to do, is to start talking about anyone we've worked with previously, who we're working with now. As we all know, the professional world gets smaller and smaller the more that you know people. And so even if you've been in a situation that didn't work out well, or you're in a current situation that's just kind of spicy right now, the professional thing to do is just not talk about it. It's just, you can simply say, hey, we're here to have fun. We're here to go forward with this retreat. And that's just not something, it's not mine to talk about, and you can quickly and politely say those things. But just as you go in, remember you're still showing up as a professional. This is a great way to get to know who I am as a person, but all the professional rules still apply. I tell people all the time, it's never a good look when you start talking about where you were raised, where you were educated, the people who gave you the first chance of your first job, the place where you worked, where you didn't know when you were fresh out of school. never talking bad about them. I mean, it's just not a good look. Bond with people over the places that educated you and the places that gave you the first opportunity to build your professional career, because that's all going to enrich us as we go forward. So, but as you go into retreats and you go into team building, just think about what interests you and what you want to talk about and how you can find those common interests with people rather than coming around to anything that wouldn't shed a good light.
Yeah, I loved when we talked earlier this week. You sort of listed out a few things, and it made me think about it when after the call. You said something about when you're going into social situations to think about. You listed that you were like books or movies or
Yes, the
uh
news. The
yeah.
news. Yeah. Have you watched the news? What events have you done recently in your local community? What movies have you seen? Travel is always a good one. And start reading the newsletters and the emails that start coming out in your company that talk about recent awards that people have received. Talk about expansions or projects, initiatives that's been going on in different areas of your company. So then when you come together, you have some things to talk about. You know what's going on in another person's program.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. To come prepared so that
Yeah,
you
a little
don't
bit.
don't veer off into things that, you would maybe regret later talking
Absolutely.
about in
Absolutely.
those kind of
Because
situations. Yeah.
yeah, we want everyone to loosen up, and so sometimes we may have a drink or cocktail or two at dinner, and at the end things start coming out a little quicker, and you just want to have things that you can positively talk about so those others won't be on the tip of your tongue.
Yes, yes, I like that. So this is really making me think because we do spend so much time when we think about professional development and coaching and those kinds of things in our field. I think we do a really great job of teaching and sharing, how to work with children. And, we talk about literacy and we talk about math and all those things. We're doing a good job of talking about nutrition and physical activity and how important those things are. And we have a huge focus on just staff well-being. Obviously, that's why we do Wellbeing Wednesday. And this particular dimension, I feel like, is there's sort of a gap there when it comes to like where do young people or not young people, all people who need to build their professional skills and sort of see that as a gap. Or even if you're a leader and maybe your staff don't see it as a gap, but you do, like where do you know of resources or where you would encourage folks to turn to really build those skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I work with individuals one on one to help coach through a variety of things. I also do group interactions and presentations. And so, if there's things that you as a supervisor see that your team needs, it's always great to reach out and we can curate something, because the world of professionalism and leadership and manners and etiquette, I mean, it goes from A to Z. You can think of
Sure.
something, everything in between. And so sometimes I tell people etiquette, and I think I told you this, is it's like an aha moment and then a like moment.
I
So
love that. Talk about that a little bit
so
because I,
sometimes,
mhm,
yeah, manners and etiquette, when we get to talking, you're like, like I knew that. I knew that. Like it, I may have gotten lax on it, or maybe it's a friendly reminder, but you already knew it, or you've heard it and you've learned it. And you're like, okay, okay, But then also, there's moments where you're like, I didn't know that at first, or I've always wondered why that was important, or like thanks for sharing with me because I have a situation coming up soon where I need to know this. And so it's always nice to either or confirmation that I'm doing it. Like, okay, nice. I have been being really professional in my communication. I have been doing all of these things that I've been working hard to improve. So I always have a great list of books. Start reading. I tell people this about mentoring. Be your own mentor first. And when you start reading more and you start doing Google alerts on your email. And so if anything's published in the news or published an article about something, you're getting an email. Once you start diving in and reading, start watching new videos. Get on LinkedIn. You'll find a lot of things that I share on Instagram or LinkedIn. And so start watching people, making contacts, and then you'll find the people that you'll need. You'll start getting the introductions and you'll start finding the mentors that have been doing it long enough. And I think early childhood education is in a great area. We talked about this, that there's multi generations. And
Mhm.
sometimes just
Yeah.
watching a generation that's ahead of you a couple of years or a couple of decades, like start watching for role models, start being a role model yourself, like if, and those things just start really building your professional skills.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we just have a few minutes left. It's crazy how fast 30 minutes flies. Are there anything that you wanted to share with this audience, either those on live or those who are going to watch the replay, that you didn't get to say? Any tips or strategies or just reminders?
One thing I want to touch on about the occupational and professional wellness is learning how to be resilient. And resilience is not just pushing through to exhaustion. Resilience is learning to rest. It's learning to have nutritious food. It's learning to move, journaling, your creativity. I just really encourage everyone who is doing hard professional work every day is to understand you can only give so much of yourself, but find a way to be creative, find a way to journal, find a way to just build these resilience reserves ahead of time. So that
Hmm.
way it's not leading to burnout and it's not leading to not wanting to be in the profession any longer. So just know the rest and the movement and the time that we take for ourselves is really what builds resilience in the end.
Absolutely. Great reminders. So tell our listeners where they can find you.
Oh my goodness. Okay, just about everywhere. So Instagram at Dr. Veronica Guinn and LinkedIn, Facebook, those three I keep pretty steady. I have a weekly newsletter. You can go to my website, veronicaguinn.com. There's a sign up for a weekly newsletter. So I have about 15 years of leadership and etiquette work and research and writings that I have done. And so I send those out weekly if you'd love to get on the email list. But really, Instagram and LinkedIn, a little bit of TikTok, but I do videos, instructional videos, quotes, links to articles, just
Awesome.
everything that I think people could kind of help just have a little more confidence in every situation they find themselves in.
Yeah, I think about that, classroom teacher who, has aspirations to
Yeah,
be an owner one day or a director or be a coach or provide, and just think about those skills that I hope that they focus on early on to really build that professional capacity so that it moves them, into the places and spaces that they want to be. So
yeah.
it sounds like you are a great resource for all
Thank
things
you.
professionalism. So we appreciate that. I do want to remind everybody to follow us on the Be Well Care Well Facebook page. We have an Instagram that you can follow us there. We are launching today our new Facebook. It's a private Facebook page called Be Well, Care Well Boost, where you can have access to a well-being coach all the time. And we'll be doing some lots of engagement in there daily, providing resources. So we hope it's going to be a really good, safe space for folks to go in and build a community around all the dimensions of wellness. So check that out. And we'll be sending more information about that. We will make sure that you know where you can find Dr. Gwen. And we appreciate you being here. Just thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to the listeners who are here now and those who will come in on the replay. We will see you the next quarter. So
Yes.
thank
Okay.
you
Thank
so
you. Have
much.
a good afternoon. Bye now.
All right. Thank you.